Hi kawan, welcome to Mr.EDCReady. Today I'm going to do a full review of the Ruike P801 SF. Now, it's pronounced Ruike, but I like to say Ruike because that's how it's spelled. So without further ado, here is the knife. Let's get some info on the brand itself. So Ruike is a brand out of China. They are a subset of Phoenix flashlights, and you know what? They do really good like budget knives. Okay, knives that you don't expect to be as good as they are because of the pricing. Definitely the materials are not super high end, but the fit and finish and the designs are pretty darn good for the price. So I think I cut myself. Anyway, first things first, let's get some measurements right here. So the blade measurement is we are coming here at 3.45 inches. We have a blade handle length of 4.46 inches. Okay, and let's go to the thickness dimension here. We have a 0.12 inch blade. As for the handle itself is extremely thin handle, 0.36 inches. And another very important dimension is this dimension right here, because that's what you feel in the pocket. We are at 1.1 inches. Alright, so as you can see, it's a pretty small knife. You know, this is only very slightly thicker than the Spyderco Dragonfly. And the Spyderco Dragonfly, if you know it, is one of the thinnest knives out there, and this is like right up there with that. I think it's even slightly thinner than the Spyderco Delica. In terms of width, at 1.1 inches, it's really not that bad. I definitely have a knife that is narrower than this, but it is pretty much like one of my narrowest knife, and that's really nice in the pocket because it doesn't take a lot of pocket space. Your hand can still go by and you can still put your phone in and stuff. So the last dimension I want to talk about is the weight dimension. And the weight of this knife is 1.19 grams, which is just about 4.2 ounces. So not the lightest knife. And yeah, let's just go into a review. Okay, so we're gonna go from tip to butt right here. The blade here is 14C28N. 14C28N, for my understanding, is designed for making cutting tools like razors and blades. And you know what? You can really feel it because this gets into an extremely sharp edge. This is a factory edge, and it feels sharper than any other factory edge I've ever had. Well, in my collection. So that's really great. That's really nice. That's probably because 14C28N apparently has very fine molecules, so you can get it to a very sharp edge. 14C28N is also a stainless steel blade, which is great. Living in Malaysia, it's hot, it's wet, it's salty because we're sweating all the time. So having a blade that is stainless definitely is very helpful. Next up, let's talk about the blade. The blade is a full flat grind at 0.12 inches, so it comes to a very nice fine edge, especially with this kind of sharp edge right here. It cuts really well, and I like that. And the advantage of full flat grind is that as you cut through it, it's a nice like separation of material. Whereas if it's a saber grind or a high grind, sometimes you get that much steeper angle. So that's great. The blade shape itself is very nice. You have a true flat part here. You don't have any kind of smile here. It doesn't recurve at all. It's completely flat. And then there is a nice amount of belly and a pretty sharp tip. This tip is very penetrative, which I really like. Another thing is that it has a very nice sharpening choil. It's nice and deep and completely passes the plunge grind, so you don't get any unsharpened edge at all. And I'm sorry, I am bleeding because I cut myself just now. Anyway, that's a knife guard right there. Now moving back, it has nice thumb studs design, which is that it's blue in color, and then, well, that's very nice. Unfortunately, the thumb studs don't work really well. I've seen people flick this open, but I can't flick this open at all. And the one or two times that I managed to flick it open, it didn't go all the way down. It didn't go all the way open, and it's just, I don't know, to me this is just decorative. Like, I think it's nice, but if I could remove this I would, but I think it looks nice. Okay, moving back, let's move to the pivot. Now the pivot is a non-free spinning pivot, which is great. It means that I can just put in one Torx key here, and then I can just unscrew it. I don't need to put keys on both sides to unscrew it. Now the disadvantage of this pivot is that although that's nice, the screws themselves are actually very short. So the problem with very short screws is that you don't have a lot of variance that you can work with. It's either tight, which is what it is right now, or it's going to be loose and it's going to start unscrewing itself. Now the first time I took this apart, I put on some Loctite and then I screwed it in. And then it was fine for about 50 flips, then it started unscrewing itself. So I tightened it and I flipped it again, and about 20 flips later it started unscrewing itself again. So I got home, I took apart the screw, I doubled the amount of glue Loctite, and then I screwed it back in. Then I put Loctite on this screw as well, screwed that back in, and then I just left it for the next 24 hours to dry up. And then that's how I fixed the unscrewing out issue. Unfortunately, because of its short screw, I can't, like I mentioned, I can't really adjust it to the point that it gets completely fall shutty. So this is now at full tightness with double the Loctite. So hopefully that doesn't like stop me from taking it apart again the next time. The good news is that the screws itself the pivots themselves actually feel hardened, because I have another knife where I've taken apart and then the screws feel a bit soft, but these screws actually feel nice and hard, and it has this nice like blue anodization ring over that. So I think that's just a very nice design touch. Now let's talk about the action. The action is great. It has a nice strong detent, and then it just flies out. Now, every time I manage to get a good purchase on this, it just flies out without fail. Okay, and as for the drop shot, it doesn't really drop, it does take a bit of a shake. It does come down all the way. It has improved over time. The first few weeks I had this, it just didn't want to drop shot at all. I would just shake, it didn't go down. First time I took it apart, I tried to adjust the pivot, and then it did fall shut, but then it started unscrewing, so I had to tighten it all the way back down. So now I hope that I just keep flipping it until it loosens up, until it wears in properly, and then it can get more and more drop shotty. But now it just still takes a bit of shake to come down. And that's probably because the screws are so short. As I mentioned, I have to screw in all the way. Now the flipper tab, I really like this flipper tab. The first time I looked at it, I thought like, oh no, it's gonna be alright. It's nice and hooked. It's not just a straight flipper tab like my QSP Deva. So I thought it was gonna be quite comfortable, but I was really hoping that it had some form of jimping, and this doesn't. And I thought that was gonna be a problem. It's actually one of the few things that made me realize that maybe I don't want to get this knife. But when I had this in hand and I finally flipped it, it actually feels really nice. It doesn't need jimping at all because of the way it's hooked forward, right? I can really apply a lot of pressure onto it in the right angle, and then it just flies off. Now the reason why I wanted some jimping is that because it's stainless steel, it can be a little bit slippery. Okay, but and I have slipped off on this once or twice, but you know what, that's kind of my fault. My hands tend to get a little bit sweaty. It would be nicer with a bit of jimping. I do wish that it had jimping, but regardless, the flipper tab actually works really well, and is actually shaped really well. Now moving down in the knife, we have here a frame lock. Now it doesn't have a stainless steel insert because the handles are stainless steel. So why you want stainless steel insert? Because if you have like a titanium handle and you have a steel knife, what happens is the titanium is a bit of a softer steel compared to the stainless steel of the knife, and then as a result the titanium would just wear in a lot faster. In this case, they will wear in at the same rate, and in fact the knife came in at a very nice 40% lockup. And it is rock solid. This lock here is rock solid. There's no side-to-side play at all in any direction. There's no lock at all in any direction. And because it's stainless steel, there's also no lock stick. Okay, sometimes you get a little crack, but in this case, it's just nice and smooth. In a frame lock, the thing about a frame lock compared to a liner lock is that if you have your finger on the frame lock, you're not going to be able to open it. So you're going to want to move your finger away from the frame lock. Then it will fire. And the detent here is nice and strong. It's nice and snappy, and it's nice and fun, and well, I just really like it, and I'm a sucker for strong detents. Now let's move on to the handles. The handles here are all stainless steel, and even though that it has some nice contouring here, it has a nice finger groove here. Okay, it has nice jimping up here. I forgot to mention that about the blade. It has nice jimping up here. Unfortunately, the knife feels very slippery because there's no other texturing, and this stainless steel is very slippery. Sometimes I can feel like it just wants to slip off my hand. A couple of things I'm going to do to fix this. I'm going to buy one of those like finger skateboard tape and just tape it here for extra texturing, but just keep in mind that this can be a pretty slippery knife. Now moving on to the rest of the knife here. So the knife here, as you can see, the edges here are nicely chamfered. Every corner here is nicely chamfered, and there are no sharp edges around the outside of the knife at all. Even on the blade here, it is nice and rounded off a little bit. And the jimping here, even though it's nice and abrasive, provides a lot of traction, it is not sharp compared to my Dragonfly. The Dragonfly is nice and it's just as grippy as this jimping. Unfortunately, the Dragonfly, the corners of the jimping here are still sharp, so it can still be considered quite sharp, and then it can be quite uncomfortable. But this, they actually rounded off the sides of the jimping here, which is great because then I have good grip, but it doesn't want to like dig into my finger on the side here. So that's great. Pretty good fit and finish overall. I don't see any gaps. There's no shaking of this stop pin right here, which on my Gunzo the stop pin shakes because of a fit and finish issue. No gaps here. Everything is nice and chamfered. Everything is nice and rounded. There are no sharp edges. Even the inside here, the edges here are not completely rounded, but they're not sharp either, so which is great. I think that's because of the type of finish they have here. We have here is, I believe it is like a stonewash satiny finish. I don't know what you call it, but I consider it like a stonewash kind of finish. And then it's just really nice. Moving on to the clip. The clip is a nice deep carry pocket clip. Now, I don't really like titanium clips. I like stainless steel clips because it still has a lot of flex to it compared to a titanium clip, which can be pretty hard. And this is a nice blue titanium clip. It has a nice high ramp right here, so it's very easy for your pants to get underneath. And because it's stainless steel, it's actually really smooth, so it doesn't feel like it's eating up my pants as much as if it was on like a very rough FRN or something. My biggest problem with this is that, yes, I love deep carry, but the screws go up really high into the pocket clip space right here, so much so that there are certain pants I would carry this with, and if I'm wearing another type of pants, I would not carry this with because it just snags up on those screws, and that's really frustrating for me because if this was perfectly flush or even slightly lower, or if the clip was slightly higher, I would wear this with almost any pants. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Time for the conclusion. Now, why would you like this knife? If you're a guy that likes a budget knife, and this is what it is, it's a budget knife, but with decent material, with pretty good fit and finish for the price. And if you're like me, you are someone who likes to fidget with a knife, like a strong T10, okay, just like that, you are gonna like this knife. If you are the kind of person that likes subtle design keys, okay, because it's not very flashy. If you guys like all these subtle design blues and silver, you're gonna like this knife. And you're gonna like this knife if you like frame locks. And if you're gonna like this knife, and you are also gonna like this knife if you love simplicity, because at the end of the day, this is a very simple knife. There is no milling on the inside, which is why it's slightly heavy. It doesn't feel like it's not an extremely heavy knife. It just feels dense. For the size, it feels like there's a lot of density to it, because 4.2 ounces is no joke, especially for a knife that is 3.5 inches long, with a blade that's 3.5 inches long. Now, you are not gonna like this knife if you want something really light. If you want something under 3 ounces, you're not gonna like this knife. You are not gonna like this knife if you are a kind of person that likes higher end material. If you like titanium, if you like S30V, S35V, and M390, then you are gonna want to look into, like, say, zero tolerance 0450. Or you want to look into some of the other Spydercos or whatnot. So you want to look into that. But if you're kind of person that wants to be as practical as possible, you're gonna get this knife. You know, it does, for my daily life, 99% of what those higher end ZTs would do. And because of the pricing, it is much easier to swallow. And to be honest, you get 99% of the function and right around 95% of the feel good factor of this knife. Add to that the fact that everything is nicely chamfered around here. It's just comfortable in the pocket, and it is also very comfortable in the hands. Okay, if you're the kind of person who has bigger hands and then you want a thicker knife, you like that feeling, you're not gonna like this, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a very thin knife. It's designed to be carried every day without any kind of hassle whatsoever. Okay, so yeah, that is the review of the Ruike P801 SF, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Don't forget to check out my Patreon if you guys want to support the channel, help me bring more quality gear. Oh, one thing I want to mention is that I got this knife because I was looking into the ZT0450. Unfortunately, it was a little bit out of my budget, so I got to researching, and this was the next best deal. And you know what, I'm pretty happy I got this. Okay, I'll let you guys know, like, in maybe next year I'll do a follow-up review to tell you guys, like, if it has changed, if it has transformed this action, or if I fix the unscrewing out issue. And yeah, so guys, stay ready and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, guys.